Well, it's a beautiful morning. 2 nights ago, we got a lot of rain, and so the mango trees and all of the trees actually are very happy. And more importantly, we have some fruit, flowers and fruit to show you on many varieties. Of course, this is our Julie collection. We have 4 high-grafted Julies that always look so spectacular. Had lots of bloom, still have bloom. This is second bloom is coming, and we have fruit on the tree. A fair amount of fruit. It looks really good, and that's just, fruit from the first bloom. And we should have a whole nother set of fruit from the second bloom. So all of these are looking fabulous. Just lots of small fruit. Of course, it's not going to hold all of the fruit. Like, for instance, there's 4 fruit on that panicle. I'm guessing at least, well, that one has a little damage. This is small. Hopefully we'll have 2 fruit that survive on that panicle. This one, fruit is larger, and that's in part because it's only one on that panicle. So different stages, different sizes, but looking really good for Julie. Okay, just beyond the Julie row, we have this tree. It started off as being something completely different, and I top worked it. This is Himsagar, and look at the top of the tree. We've got some panicles that are completely dead. That was from an early bloom, but also apparently from the early bloom we have fruit. So this one panicle, I'm not sure if you can see it right up there, it's got a fair amount of fruit on it, but then a side shoot, a new panicle shooting out from just where the base of that panicle is, new flowers. So crazy. This tree just really wants to make fruit, and that's good because it's a very popular variety. Here's some mixed bloom right there. Haven't seen a ton of mixed bloom around the grove. Usually we see a whole lot more, but there's some. And of course, dead panicle, we know what that looks like. Very crunchy. So we might as well just zip over here. This is a fairly new addition to the grove. I top worked an existing tree to apricot, and we've got, fruit set. Even this one, it looked like it didn't have any fruit, but then there was one. So we've got a fair amount of fruit set and new bloom. So looking good for apricot. There's just a whole lot of bloom. I believe that is Neelam, but I could be wrong. We had originally Neelam and Cogswall up here, but then I started messing with that. I just can't help myself sometimes. You have some science that I want to graft somewhere, and so suddenly a single graft tree becomes a multi-graft. So not sure, but once that fruits, we will know. And it looks like very healthy bloom. Lots of very small fruit, which, the hundreds of fruit that are on each panicle are not going to make it. Just a few of those fruit will. Yeah, over here we're getting into some multi-graft territory, but healthy bloom, we'll see what the fruit is later. And of course we'll label the different branches, so we, next season we can go and say definitively what each variety is. Here's a situation that is new. We used to have a fairly big tree, and it was a sea bean, and it came in on some, a friend of mine cleared beaches of seaweed and such, and when he got a particularly clean load, as in not a bunch of garbage that a lot of times comes in with the seaweed, he came and brought it here because that's full of good micronutrients and such. This was in that load, and apparently the sea beans originate in Brazil and then travel the world in the oceans, no problem, and then wash up on the beach and start making plants. We were just spread. I did not intentionally, plant the seed for this tree, but it came in with a bunch of seaweed. Put it over here. It became a fairly tall tree, and I thought it might be best just to have that be a thing of the past, and after the root system gets a little bit aged and such, I will plant another mango tree there. This, I should mention this tree, this is a little different. It's one of our smaller trees and should stay pretty small. Half of it, this half I believe is Julie, and the other half is Ice Cream. So fairly comparable growth habits. Top worked, of course, a seedling tree, and it's stayed fairly uniform. The east side and the west side. I think that we'll probably trim the west side down a little bit, and so that it stays stays the same size for the whole tree for at least a little while, but fairly comparable growth habit. On this Julie part of the tree, we're seeing some small fruit, and we have some flowers emerging. And Ice Cream, there's just lots of flowers. I'm not seeing young fruit yet. It seems like a little bit later bloom than the Julie had, but looks like we'll get some fruit on both sides of that tree. Here's a cherry tree, and this is interesting for one particular reason. I did an experiment with it, and basically this was the last tree in the grove to get trimmed, and we trimmed it a different way. Instead of just going around and cutting things all over the tree at about the same distance from the center of the tree, we trimmed some of the branches out further, leaving younger growth, and then some of them back more toward the interior of the tree. And the reason I wanted to do that was to see if it would affect the bloom, the timing of the bloom. Basically, there were some areas that we didn't cut back as drastically. Those were the points in the tree that flowered first. The parts of the tree that we cut back further, closer to the center of the tree, it took a while for the new growth to become mature enough to flower. So we actually got two different stages of flowers on this tree, and basically by design. Right now you can't really tell that. I mean, you do see some places where there's young leaves and not flowers, but it was much more evident just about a month ago, that difference between the different areas of the tree. Here's Malika. We've got lots of nice healthy bloom. No fruit set yet, but it's coming soon. This is Ice Cream, just tons and tons of flowers. We've got some young leaves here, but most of the tree just loaded with flowers. This is Coggeshall. I've got a lot of panicles within range here, so you can see how much fruit we have set on these panicles. Got a couple different stages. Of course, this one's younger, so it looks prettier, but in all cases, lots of fruit set. Also, remember, that doesn't mean we're going to get like 1,000 fruit on a panicle. We'll be lucky for just a few. So one other thing I'll mention is that this tree was part of an experiment last year. We were trying to see if we could affect the timing of the crop with this particular Coggeshall tree and its sister tree right next door. And basically this was the tree that we cut back really late in the season, and we got 0 fruit from it. So we know not to do that again. But this year it is making up for lost time. We've got beautiful bloom and young fruit set. Actually not so young. Some of these are an inch or more in size. So hopefully this season will be a lovely one for Coggeshall. And this is the other Coggeshall tree, and you can see there's a difference. This has bloomed a little bit earlier and the bloom is gone. Just have a little evidence of it here and there. And the fruit are larger, and that's because the tree bloomed earlier. So our little experiment with the timing of trimming affecting the timing of the crop, we actually did get results. It was just a year later. We thought that we would get some difference last year, but the difference last year was one tree didn't fruit, one did. This year, the schedule of the crops, each tree's crop is different, and so that's nice because we'll have Coggeshall, apparently for a longer period of time this coming mango season. Here's Edgar looking gorgeous. Look at all this beautiful bloom. These big panicles just looking gorgeous. Got a fruit right next door. So we've had this branch was just a little different timing. Have a few fruit around. This is sort of fun. We've got a panicle with fruit, and then there's secondary panicles, younger ones coming out, so we should get some more fruit on those. So this Edgar is a good example of like timing is everything. It put out its bloom a little later, so that it was completely not affected by that cold, wet weather that we had that destroyed a lot of bloom, or the first bloom on several varieties. The first bloom came in later, and it's just looking gorgeous. So here's another situation of lovely bloom. This is somewhat common. We have young growth, but then it also wanted to bloom. Usually it's one or the other or a mixed bloom, but this is not mixed bloom. It actually shot out leaves, and then closer, or right at the tip of the older growth, it shot out flowers. Got some nice fruit up here. This is Glen. We have a lot of people looking forward to our Glen mangoes. Just a very nice classic Florida variety. And so far it's looking good. We have, of course, more than just one Glen tree. Very popular variety. This is just a good example. We've got several other in the grove. And we have This tree looking gorgeous also. Look at this bloom, just crazy. Beautiful colors. Got a bee that is wanting desperately to pollinate. But this is Venus. That is Walter Zill's favorite variety. The panicles are extra long and the branches have to be fairly strong because Venus is a big fruit. So hopefully we'll get a great season of Venus. Oh, here we go. We've got a few little Venuses forming. We've got 3 on that panicle. Oh, more than, that's 4 of them. So, and then we have little ones at the end. That's sort of funny. The very tip, we've got a whole bunch of little fruit, and then we've got the 4 bigger fruit further back. Of course, something like this, all of these young fruit are not going to make it to maturity. It's just a lot to ask of those little branches, but right now it's looking really beautiful. So here is a crazy tree. This is Duncan, and look at the number of fruit on these panicles, just a huge amount. Extremely productive. Of course, it's not going to be able to hold all those fruit to maturity, but crazy amount. We've got some mixed bloom here. We've got some fresh bloom, and tiny beginnings of fruit. And we have some branch tips at the top of the tree that haven't flowered or produced fruit yet. But then just a little bit over, we have this sort of the same situation, top of the tree, but lots of fruit. Bottom line for Duncan, starting out with a huge amount of fruit, an insane amount of fruit, and we'll end up with just a large amount of fruit from this tree. Just a whole lot of fruiting and flowering going on. I think this right here, I'm pretty sure this is Marlis. Lovely mango and looking good. And we have 2 trees very close together. We've got Rosa back here, and Rosa often is our very first variety to produce fruit. This, of course, is a small tree. We're not looking for a lot of fruit from it yet, but so far so good. Right next to it, its little buddy here is Himsagar. We've got flowers, and these flowers not looking quite as good. I guess we're still okay though. From ground level, it was looking very bad because there's just a lot of the dried flowers, but there are some good flowers and very small young fruit, a little bit bigger young fruit, so hopefully we'll get a good year from both of those varieties. Here's one of those varieties that, let's see, hopefully it has a name attached to it. The name has worn off. So it looks like we're going to get a fair amount of fruit from this tree, and after we get the fruit, we will know what variety it is. Right now, it's just a nice looking tree with lots of flowers on it. Well, I know there's a lot of lemon meringue fans out there wondering how that particular variety is doing. So here's one of our lemon meringue trees. It's really got a lot of fruit at the top of the tree and not much happening on the sides. It's just this particular tree has an extreme example of that. Well, it wasn't a great carry year last year, but this year it's looking a little more promising. You never know what's going to last until, mango season, but this has a lot of small fruit and has some young bloom also. So hoping for a good year from Carrie. It's Valencia Pride. We've got flowers and small fruit. It's looking good so far. Up here's a little bit bigger fruit. Of course, Valencia Pride is a fairly late season fruit because it takes a while to grow as big as it does. This is Paige, nice big mango. Looks like a very good year, but because the mangoes get so big, a lot of these fruit will be falling because it can't grow that many big mangoes on one little branch. Here's another Glen tree, looking good. Here's a little tree with a story. This was a seedling tree, and I recently became a huge fan. I was always a huge fan, but now it's a huge fan of Mandalay. So I grafted Mandalay onto this seedling tree, and all of the bloom that you see is Mandalay. Now, fortunately, it's a really nice big fruit. Unfortunately, it's a really big fruit. So this tree is really not able to support a big fruit at this time. So I'm not looking for fruit this year from this particular tree, but possibly next year. It was very recently that I top worked this tree, and I'm amazed that it has flowers, because a lot of times that when you top work a tree, things grow so quickly that it doesn't flower for the first year. This is flowering even though it's less than a year old as far as the top work goes. Yeah, we've got a lot of small trees in this area. This is one of my favorite trees this year. It's a seedling tree that I top worked to Marco, and it's just outperforming any expectation. It's got very healthy flowers and lots of healthy fruit set. Of course, it's not going to be able to hold all of this fruit to maturity, but very clean all the way around. Clean flowers, clean fruit, and very productive. And of course, Marco's a great variety, so that's lovely too. This tree is just looking good, but has a different story in that it has a couple varieties on it that are new to me. So one of the varieties that we should be able to taste, I'm crossing my fingers, is Nectar of Neptune. So that's a Richard Campbell variety, and some of the fruit that you see on this tree should be that variety. This, there's too much to talk about, but this particular situation is one that I think is fun. This was a grafted tree. See the graft right here. See, there's a cleft graft. And it was just hanging out, basically doing nothing. And I was interested to see what variety it was, because I didn't have it marked in any way. And so there was a larger tree just over here, and I thought, well, I'll just graft a scion from this tree onto this tree. oh my goodness, we have a fruit explosion here. Tons and tons of fruit. So it looks like we will be able to taste the fruit and hopefully identify it this next season. Of course, all this fruit is not going to make it to maturity, but we're starting out with a whole lot. So that's really fun. This is Jakarta, which Jakarta is a really nice fruit. Bloom is looking great. Fortunately, we have a few Jakarta trees around the grove, so hopefully we'll have a really good supply of this particular variety this next season. So Jakarta, looking healthy, looking good. Our Mogoba has had an amazing amount of flowers. Right now they're past their prettiest, but there is just a ton of little fruit and some fruit that's getting to be a pretty good size. There's some right up there that look like they're past the half-inch stage. So sometimes with Mogoba, the flowers just don't make it through the weather very well. But this year, there seemed to be no damage at all on the flowers, and we are hoping to get a really nice crop of Mogoba again this year. So Dwarf Hawaiian, both trees are on their second set of flowers, and this particular bloom is looking wonderful. Everything's very healthy looking, and so it looks like we'll have a pretty good year for Dwarf Hawaiian. Now we have a few fruit from the first bloom way up on top, or the high part of the trees, but what is happening on this lower level, that's going to be 90% plus of our crop, and hopefully we'll have a lot of delicious Dwarf Hawaiian mangoes this year. So this is our main Ryan tree. Ryan was actually a variety that was developed, or at least selected, by Frank Smathers down at 4 Phillies Farm. He had a wonderful piece of property, and this particular variety was named after his grandson. Grandson's name was Ryan. So anyway, it's looking great. The flowers are looking really healthy, and we're hoping for a lot of nice fruit from Ryan. So this tree just looks really artsy, healthy, full of all sorts of things. We've got flowers, we've got fruit. The fruit are pretty big for, this time in the season. There's actually 2 or 3 varieties on this tree, and so once we start picking the fruit, we're going to start labeling the branches. So next season we'll know which branch is which variety, but Sweet Tart is one of them, and we're looking forward to a lot of nice Sweet Tart. Here's another mango tree with a lot of impressive, very healthy bloom and young fruit. This particular tree is one of our Malika trees, and fingers crossed, it looks like it's going to be a very nice season. Well, here is a very impressive lemon meringue tree, just loaded with really decent sized fruit for this time in the season. Of course, some of them are not going to develop. That's just the way it is. But there are a lot on here that are well on their way. One thing I've noticed with some of the lemon meringue is that we're getting, like this stuff happening. I think that's mango scab, and basically that fruit was not going to develop, so it's fine to take it off at this stage. But there's not a lot of fruit on this tree that has it, but it seems like the ones that do are the small ones, and the bigger ones are generally cleaner. Right here is Pina Colada. At least most of it. This one part here is not. You might notice the difference in leaves. So we have just this one area that I believe is Kent. But the Pina Colada is got a lot of bloom, but a lot of emerging bloom. There's, well, let's see what we can, here's a little fruit. You see what else is on this. Oh, there was a panicle that used to be. Here's some younger bloom. This, like, of course, a lot of the flowers die. There's, it can't all be fruit, but this is a lot of potential fruit in many areas of that panicle. So we've got apparently bloom that came out in 2 different stages, and the younger bloom is looking prettier, not as much that has died back, but each of these panicles is pretty much going to carry maybe up to 3 fruit total. It doesn't matter what the panicle looks like at this stage, it just can't hold all of that fruit. And so even though different panicles look quite different, I think that each one is going to be holding between 1 and 3 fruit. And here we are with Kent. Kent has a lot of nice bloom, just at a very pretty stage. Look at all that. It's just lots of little green fruit. And then back here, this is a little bit older panicle, and we've got fruit that's about 1 inch. The bigger ones are about 1 inch. So then we have this. Just a lot of fruit on that one panicle. This is one that's not going to make it. Started to turn yellow already, so no problem taking that off. And then this is another one, another situation for having some problem with the fruit at that stage. It's not going to make it to maturity, but we do have a lot of fruit that is bigger on this tree, and so looks like it'll be a pretty good year for Kent. So here's our Bombay tree, and it's looking very healthy, and I see just a few panicles. We've got a little one up here, and then we've got this one, and then one right over here. So we have the potential for having some fruit on this tree. Unfortunately, last year we got 0 fruit from our Bombay. This year we've got existing panicles, and there's still time for the tree to push out some more panicles. I think that some of these buds are going to be flowers, but we'll just have to see. But so far, Bombay is looking pretty good. Oh, here we have a few more panicles here, up there, and over here. So that's just what is showing right now. Different varieties seem to have a different time schedule than other varieties. So even though we have a few panicles now and not much like looking like it's emerging yet on the tree, it could be a very different story in a few weeks. This could be just a fraction of what the eventual bloom will be. So we'll just check back on it, see how it goes. So this is one of our Zil Indo Chinese trees, and it is looking fabulous. just a lot of nice healthy leaves on it. We've got lots of fruit. Of course, not all that fruit's going to hold, but it looks like we'll have a darn good crop. And not only do we have fruit that is in many cases over an inch big at this point, we also have a few panicles. We've got 2 right in this area and then some lower down right here too. So we have significantly sized fruit plus new bloom. So another variety that people are wondering about is fruit punch. And this is our main fruit punch tree, looking very healthy. We've got like young bloom here, a little bit of fruit set. That's sort of the story for the lower parts of the tree. But if you look up higher, we've got some nice sized fruit. Nice sized as far as its potential, but definitely not something to get your knife and fork out for right now. We've got the south side of the tree just has even more fruit. Up higher in the tree, generally is where the fruit has formed first, and then the lower parts have the fresh flowers. This is the east side of the tree, and I guess this is the star, the star area. We've got a lot of fruit for most of the east side, and it's pretty darn good size right now. Here's a very popular early variety. Some people get fruit, have already gotten fruit on their rosy gold trees. As in fruit that they can eat. We have fruit on our tree, but it's not ready to eat yet. These are, I think, the biggest mangoes in the grove, though. They're coming right along. We have a couple stages of bloom. This was earlier stage that got hit with bad weather, but fortunately we have some very nice sized fruit and also some fresh bloom. So looking pretty good for rosy gold. So here's an interesting tree. Until like a year ago, or less than a year ago, this was Florigon. Now, Florigon is a tried and true variety. It's resistant to a lot of diseases and all sorts of things. Very reliable producer, but not my favorite flavor. So what I did with one of our Florigon trees, we do have another one, so all those Florigon fans will have some fruit hopefully this next season. But with this one, I cut it back and grafted cack onto it. And because of grafting another variety onto a very well-established tree, I knew that there was a pretty good risk that we wouldn't get fruit soon from this tree because all of those scions would be growing very quickly. Well, fortunately, we have fruit. We've got flowers with very young fruit, and we have fruit set that is pretty significant on the higher branches. It seems like most of the big fruit is up high, but it's surprising how many fruit are on this tree and how much bloom is on this tree because of it being so recently top worked. So hopefully we will have a lot of nice cack fruit this coming season. Well, here's a familiar area. We're back at the Phoenix area of this big tree, and as you might recall, the last time we were here, it was not looking good. The flowers were really affected by the weather, and of course we have evidence of that with lots and lots of dead panicles. So that was pretty much the story last time, but of course this time we've had a chance to, or the tree has had a chance to flower again. So we have really awful looking dead panicle here, and then the newer ones looking fabulous. So it's not a big deal when you have early bloom and it all gets sort of destroyed quickly. It can be disheartening, it can look terrible, but often there's hope. And in this case, this year, we have a lot of really nice looking healthy panicles that are setting fruit, and we're looking forward to hopefully a good year for Phoenix.